now we are excited to hear from Dr. Erica Grimm on paying attention and the cost of inattention. So Dr. Grimm is a professor of art on sabbatical with Trinity Western University. A Canadian artist of settler descent and professor of art, Erica Grimm is a grateful guest on the traditional unceded territory of the Stalo people. She is honored to have held a Canada Council and Shirt grants for her material practice rooted in drawing. Curious about saturated, inexpressible, but ordinary experiences, her work explores the overlapping entanglements between embodiment and ecology. And I think many of us can attest to how wonderful Erica is to work with and very interdisciplinary.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, welcome and thank you, everyone, for being here as opposed to at any of the other wonderful rooms that are. I'm glad to be in all of them. Okay, I would like to start by paying attention. Let's all pay attention to the land, to the tumuk on which we are situated. Let's all acknowledge that we are on the traditional, ancestral, unceded Stalo tumuk, the land that has been cared for since time immemorial. Paying attention, the cost of inattention. My presentation today is going to has kind of an outrageous conclusion, especially in this audience. What I'm going to say is that making art can establish the cognitive preconditions for making better decisions about planetary health. Okay, so that's very specific. Making, active practice, cognitive preconditions. So those are 2 big things that hopefully I will try and convince you of this by making great use of Dr. Iain McGilchrist's research. Now, I wonder who here is familiar with his work, who The Matter with Things or The Master and His Emissary. Is anyone familiar? Yeah, good. You've got a few hands. I'll be drawing heavily on his work. In any case, let's go here. Attention really matters. Exercising attention is what I do in the studio and what I teach in all my classes. You might think of me, a professor of art, as an attention trainer. I'm convinced that paying attention in a way that complicates and completes knowledge and reason of a more mechanistic sort is the core of every artist's practice. And Teddy mentioned that nurses are half art, half science, so I'm including you guys in here too. That the attention practiced in the studio or perhaps at the bedside might just be far more important than anyone thought. Although it is often assumed that one just has this magical ability to pay attention in particular ways, it is possible and necessary to consciously practice and develop one's attention. Like every bodily attribute, it strengthens with exercise and requires mindfulness. When we are not mindful about our attention, it can be manipulated. Knowing attention to be limited, scarce, and valuable, tech giants harvest your attention to sell it. Optimized to capture the attention of billions of people. Cognitive capitalism manipulates attention to become a product, but as research demonstrates, with devastating consequences on our ability to concentrate or to contemplate. This is not the type of attention that I'm developing in the studio, or that people like Simone Weil or Annie Dillard speak of when they say that attention is the pearl of great price, or the secret of seeing. They believed the real reason that we study anything is that it gives you the ability to pay attention. Why? Because it allows for the preconditions to be able to pray in the first place. But what does attention have to do with planetary health? Well, how we pay attention makes all the difference. It influences our epistemology, it shapes our ontology, it determines how we respond or do not respond to urgent, wicked issues like planetary health, interconnected, wicked problems as they're described. Simply put, Iain McGilchrist is convinced by a mountain of neurological data that how one pays attention changes the world. It can create. It can destroy. Not just receptive, attention is actively creative of the world that we inhabit. What you see is a product of how you attend, and of course, what you find influences what you create. McGilchrist found that the two hemispheres of the brain pay attention in entirely different ways. That's my brain, by the way. The two halves, corpus callosum, there, nice and plump, yes. But the two hemispheres of the brain pay attention in entirely different ways. The one side, the left side, takes things apart to manipulate, while the other, the right, embraces the whole connected gestalt. The whole brain is used for everything. We're all using it all the time, but each half perceives the world differently, entirely differently as it ends up. The right hemisphere perceives the world holistically. Linked with creativity, it responds to flow. It's integrative. Context changes everything. So in the sciences, we're always taking things out of context. Well, context actually changes things. We teach this in the studio. And things are connected one with another. The left hemisphere perceives the world instrumentally. Very important, very practical, very concrete. It grasps things to use them. Linked with logic and reason, it divides things up. McGilchrist emphasizes how essential that is, but continues, it's only a preparatory phase for linking things back up again. That's the big thing. It's a preparatory phase to reconnecting something that is now more complex. That's the bit we have lost sight of, he says, making a concerted effort to fit things back together into a whole. The hemispheres nest and complete one another. Information is passed across the corpus callosum many times before wisdom emerges. What's the matter with things? Well, not processing things back and forth over the corpus callosum many times. That's what the problem is. Not processing what the left produces through the integrative right hemisphere is the cause of many of the wicked problems that we're grappling with here today. Science and reason are critically important, of course, but they can only take us part way. Also needed is a capacity for creativity, intuition, and imagination. Teach other things like ambiguity tolerance, emotional intelligence, that opposites give rise to new information, are generative. That paradox uncovers deeper levels of truth. Nothing is either or, it's always both and. Metaphor is the root of all meaning, and you really have to mind your metaphors. How to embrace change, not fear uncertainty, and what to do when the rules and the system start collapsing. How we pay attention influences how much of reality we see and what we miss. You might say that how we pay attention alters our view of the world. The left teaches us to apprehend, the right to comprehend. But to be able to simplify to use does not allow enough data to understand the full complexity. And so this instrumental use mitigates against seeing the full complexity. Science and logic quantify the climate crisis. The arts reimagine our connectedness with nature. So it is so important. One without the other does not give wisdom. The understanding that arises when both are used together is what we want. So it's important for the arts to reimagine our relationships with matter. The big problem is that the reductionist paradigm utilizes only instrumental attention and dismisses integrative attention, putting at risk our civilization and perhaps our species. McGilchrist invites a revolution of attention to avert the crisis of inattention, a massive change equal to the Cartesian paradigm shift that happened during the Enlightenment. Practicing any of the arts, drawing, painting, music, poetry, reinforces the right hemisphere integrated attention. Making art might not save the world, but it will help rebalance the attention imbalance. Making art can create the cognitive preconditions to seeing more of a reality, understanding the gestalt, reinvest in sensory perception, trust the intuition. The intuition is able to combine 10 to 15 strands of multiple ways of knowing. Oh dear. Physically, the right hemisphere has more dendritic branching, making it greater for interconnectivity, embedded right into the physical structure of the brain. It is huge quantity of right matter facilitates transfer across regions, creating a global picture. The right frontal lobe, you guys probably already know this, neurotransmitters allow for emotional intelligence. In any case, studio practices help. I began with the Halkamelem word tomeok. This word for land connotes a live connection between 7 generations past and 7 generations into the future. This drawing maps the bloodline circulatory of the Lower Fraser, and it's similar to what you showed yesterday, Teddy, with the red is the lost streams, the lost Sumas Lake, and the green is the high water mark of a 1.8 degree world. This map crystallized, this image crystallized 11 climate walks with experts and crystallized all of the data. All of the experts all said the same thing. All ways of knowing pointed to the same thing. This metaphor crystallizing the bloodline circulatory system. Studio practices. Can the transdisciplinary methodological complexity of contemporary art-making practices address the Anthropocene, change anything? Can exercising haptic, emotional, intuitive, imaginative, and tacit knowing complicate and complete more mechanistic thought constructs? Is it possible that reinstating sensory perception alongside reason knowing can balance the thought constructs that Descartes inaugurated? Science, reason, imagination, and intuition can work together. Waking up in the 6th extinction, the arts can help us pay attention in new ways, create new ontological tools, and establish preconditions to help imagine a new ending. Thank you.
Just one question.
Sure.
Thank you for your presentation. I just was wondering, when you talk about inattention and that there's not enough time when we're for now, we're the speed in which we're consuming information to cross over the great divide and make meaning, right? Mm-hmm. And so is there any more studies as far as this is how this is actually impacting education even from grade K to 12 and
all kinds? Well, I mean, Iain McGilchrist's work is having huge influence right now, and he's gathered all the neurological data as well as psychological data, and his work is having a huge impact. But yes, the work remains to be done to see how is this going to influence. It needs to influence educational practices. It needs to influence our cognitive practices especially the Western world, but all over the globe. Because not seeing the full reality, we're making bad decisions. We're making decisions about taking what the left hemisphere really likes rules and procedures. And what do you do when the rules and the procedures and the systems start changing? Well, you need flexible purposing to be able to shift to a shifting condition. That's very difficult. That's the biggest reorientation our species has ever had to deal with.
Wow.
It's huge. Anyway. So there's a lot of work to do. Join the work.
Wow, Erica, so